Buckle up for 13 hours, 13 and a half hours of transfer madness as the club's bosses look to plug gaps they face and in some cases save their jobs. Get in touch with us on Twitter at Mirror Football and follow us on the Deadline Day live blog. And our reporters around the world will separate the fact from the fiction, the reality from the rumours, and the truth from the tall tales we see so often on social media on days like these. To kick us off, two of our top men are with us. Andy Dunn is the Daily Mirror's chief sports writer, while John Cross is our chief football writer. To kick us off, let's look at some of the transfer stories making the back pages. The headline on the back page of the Daily Mirror is at 6s and 7s this morning. Look at the subdeck as well. United deserve a slap. And then obviously Liverpool, they get humiliated on the maddest day in Premier League history. First of all, Liverpool. Andy, you were there. That's your story. We know how bad it was. What was it like being there?
Well, it was surreal, Darren. I mean, absolutely surreal, as you can imagine. No one expected anything like that whatsoever. You might have said that Liverpool's defensive vulnerabilities were exposed by Leeds when they scored 3, albeit in a 4-3 defeat on the opening day of the season. Liverpool played this high line yesterday, and every time Villa got the ball, they looked like they were going to score. They really did. But let's give full credit to Villa. Jack Grealish was sublime. Ollie Watkins showed what a natural, brilliant finisher he is. Ross Barkley made a great debut. John McGinn was all over the park. And they were just brilliant. So it was a really, really, of all, I've been to some surreal matches behind closed doors, but that topped the lot. Jurgen Klopp said to Dean Smith after the game, simply, wow. And that was it. Wow. I'll tell you what, it'll be interesting to see if it does prompt Liverpool to do anything today. We don't expect them to, but you never know.
Yeah, Andy, you've been a journalist for 30 years or so. Where does that rank in terms of the games you've seen and the scale of the upset?
Oh, it's the biggest upset I've seen. I mean, without a doubt. Bear in mind, this is a Liverpool team that don't lose football matches, that don't have off days, that always have the right attitude. None of those were the case yesterday. It just came literally out of the blue. Bear in mind their performance only a week ago, last Monday night against Arsenal, widely acclaimed as, a really superb performance. And then this 6 days later, it was just as though there've been some warnings that the defence have maybe become a little bit nonchalant, a little bit arrogant, a little bit maybe even lazy, complacent. And all those things were sort of brushed aside, but maybe they all just came home to roost in one remarkable 90 minutes.
Okay. Let me read you a tweet from David Maddock, our colleague, of course, and the Mirror's Merseyside man. He says, serious issue for Liverpool now. Shoulder injury. They tend to be quite serious for keepers. He says, so if Alisson's out for weeks, never mind months, they will need replacement in the window tomorrow. You can tell he's running out of characters here, can't you? Brutal, but painfully obvious that the defence has no belief in Adrian, and that is at the heart of this abysmal display. You answered the question a little bit a second ago, Andy, but tell us, do Liverpool need a new backup keeper today?
Yes, but is it too late? I think it possibly will be. Who do you go and get out there now? Because you need a top-class keeper to back up. Listen, Adrian made that mistake, if you remember, when he gave possession away against Atletico Madrid, and when Liverpool went out of the Champions League last season, started exactly the same last night, giving the ball away to Jack Grealish. I totally agree with David's tweet. Alisson enables Liverpool to play that high line because he is behind them. He sweeps up behind them. He gives them that confidence. Adrian, unfortunately, does not. And also, I have to say, I know 3 of those goals were deflections, but one of them, certainly, I think the Ross Barkley one, I would have expected Alisson to save that one, certainly. And I do think long-term he will need a new number 2 keeper. Will he get him? I don't see. I really think it would be. And Liverpool, as we know, they have the best transfer setup in the business, possibly. They'll have work cut out, though, today to get someone in before 11 o'clock as backup to Alisson.
Okay. Last question for you for the time being. We know Michael Edwards, as you rightly say, works extremely hard, one of the best in the business in terms of sorting out deals for Liverpool. We also know that Xherdan Shaqiri was left out of the Carabao Cup game against Arsenal last week ahead of a transfer, but the defeat at Villa suggests there could be other incomings today, you think?
I don't think there will be any more incomes to Liverpool, and I think Shaqiri might well go. I think Jurgen Klopp likes Shaqiri. I think he likes his attitude, likes what he's done for him, and I think really, if Shaqiri can get a move, and I think there's talk, isn't it? I think of Lazio or Sevilla. If he can get an attractive move like that, then I'm sure Liverpool won't stand in his way. Don't forget, Liverpool are as good as getting people out and getting good deals for people going out as they are at getting them in. I think they might. After yesterday, have a look to see the possibility of what's happening in the goalkeeping front. But I don't expect any outfield players in now.
Right, we're getting questions in. We will read them out in a second or two, but we're just going to go to Crossy for a second just to bring you a couple of the other headlines in the papers today. John, deal with this in the Mirror this morning. Edin to the top, or Edin for another full storm. The former PSG striker Edinson Cavani set to sign for Manchester United today for £210,000 a week after tax. Perhaps our guests can get me his agent's phone number. Here's a headline. That's in the Daily Mirror today. Also in the Times, I want to bring you this too. Solskjaer looks to signings after my worst defeat ever. It will flash up in a second or two. But first of all, while waiting for that, Crossy, your thoughts on this deal for Manchester United?
Well, I do like Cavani, and I have to say, I think there's been a sort of, question marks over Cavani's salary, and also perhaps it's sort of the agent fees attached. Actually, I don't see it like that. I think if you're signing a free transfer, that those are the sort of prices and the sort of fees that you have to pay. I think it's pretty standard. I was actually sort of kind of surprised that they could get albeit perhaps used to be a world-class star for that sort of wages. Listen, Cavani is a rampaging, marauding striker who, when he was at his best, used to have about 10 chances, take 2 of them, basically. It wasn't a strike rate, So, I think we laughed, didn't we? But that's what he was known for. And yet he was a terrific player, who worked so hard for the team. But he is a bit more of a natural focal point, I have to say, than Martial. And so I do think that kind of gives United a different option. It's a panic buy. You cannot dress it up as anything else. It's a panic buy. And a club the size of Man United should not be doing panic buys. They really shouldn't be. They shouldn't even, I don't think, be going right to the end of the window. They should have made their statement signings at the start of the window to give them the best possible introduction to be, oven ready, as Boris might say, for the Premier League. I mean, it's just, it doesn't take a genius. It's bad transfer planning.
Okay, well, let me ask you this then. What's your view on United's overall transfer window, given that we knew the areas they needed to strengthen it at the end of last season?
Darren, it's embarrassing. It is embarrassing. I mean, Van der Beek's a good signing. Please don't get me wrong. And I think that's also a realistic fee, €40 million. And so I think that's a decent signing, and he's a good quality player. Why I think it's embarrassing is that basically you should know your market well enough to know Jadon Sancho's position, Borussia Dortmund's position, and you should not then, I don't think, spend the whole summer going for Sancho when fundamentally, if Dortmund's saying we are not taking a penny less for this player than £110 million, then they mean it. That's their strategy, always has been. And then basically, if another club says it, you should know the market well enough to say, yeah, but they'll crack and they'll come through late in the window. So I'm afraid to say, if you don't think that Sancho's worth that money, you look elsewhere. And basically, then you look earlier in the window at a Dembele from, for example, Barcelona. You might even look at the one from Lyon. But it's just, you look in a different direction. And I think that, frankly, they've been embarrassed by this and they've been caught short. I actually think the bigger issue is the centre-half. They needed another centre-half to strengthen that defence.
Do you think they'll do a deal today for that, Crossy? Do you think they'll get someone in today? Koulibaly's still on the market, very much available, £60 million gets him. Do you think they'll do that?
Can you do it, Darren, in a day? I mean, we've covered so many transfer windows. Listen, the old cynic in me says, we start the window cooking up the story and basically say, it could be a dramatic day. But frankly, it's very rare that deals, they do get done, but it's rare that deals, spectacular deals, get brokered and done in the very last day, by which I mean, picking up Ed Woodward picks up the phone at 9 a.m. this morning and says, okay, we'll pay what you want for Koulibaly. And then it gets done, because there's all sorts of obstacles. I think, the process needs to be in place. Don't get me wrong, it does happen. But I think we know from experience that, there has to have been some sort of discussion and negotiations before. So they've left it too late. And I think United, let's see where they go. But it's not a great start to the season by any means.
Okay, Dunn, you've done a comment piece alongside the Cavani story today in the Daily Mirror. It'll flash up in a second. You say that the game has gone on the basis of this deal. You're not happy about it at all. Tell us what you mean.
No, I'll tell you what, I was commenting on stories that Cavani's agents, there were stories that they could get up to as much as £10 million. £10 million on a guy who's been available since March, £10 million for a guy who hasn't got a club. Listen, we're used to it. Those who cover the game, those in the game, these agents' fees will become so, we're used to, we're used to Jorge Mendes, getting huge fees for players. We see it in black and white. Premier League clubs paid £263 million in agents' fees last season. The season before, they paid £260 million in agents' fees. Now, that is a lot of money. And the point of the piece this morning is that when football is asking the government and saying, can you help us out? Can you bail us out? Football is saying to the Premier League, no, you do the bailing out because you've got all this money. The Premier League say, well, no, we haven't. And, it's not our responsibility. The government turn around and say, well, hang on a minute. Look at this figure. You're paying some guy here who's taken £10 million out of the game for a deal, a free transfer of Cavani just going there. They will turn around and they'll say, look, there's £260 million in agents' fees going out of the game from the Premier League. Don't tell us that you haven't got the money to bail out lower league clubs. Wouldn't that money be better used there? Now, I understand that's not a simple equation. It just doesn't work out. You just can't say, and like Crossy says, these clubs have to get the big stars, have to get their assets, and they cost money. That's a fact of life. So it's not just a simple equation of, oh, let's not spend it on that, let's give it to the poor and needy, basically. But it's the way it looks to politicians. They will just turn around and just say, listen, you're still spending fortunes on transfer fees, fortunes on agents' fees. You use some of that money to help football out. So I think that's the point of the piece this morning.
Okay, let's look at a few more newspapers while we consider whether or not fans will indeed show sympathy with clubs who spend big money on old players, because you're absolutely right. I do think it does send out a very poor message in relation to football when it goes with its begging bowl to the government. But let's move on. In the Sun, no low deal for Callum HudsonOdoi. Bayern Munich expressed a fresh interest in the Chelsea winger over the weekend, but they're backed away after Chelsea asked for a loan with a view to a permanent £70 million deal at the end of the season. Crossy, your thoughts on this?
Listen, I actually think that HudsonOdoi, really, who I think is a super talent, please don't get me wrong, would be so well served by going out on loan, by getting some minutes, which, listen, I know he's played here and there, it has been involved recently, obviously, but I do wonder when, Pulisic comes back, and now they've signed Werner, they've got lots of options, and I wonder whether he's going to get back to his best, and that is a best, by the way, that kind of propelled him into the England squad. So there's no doubt about it, what a talent he is. But I just think that I can see where Chelsea are coming from, because I think it isn't the quibble that basically Chelsea were prepared to loan him to Bayern on the understanding it was an option for a permanent deal rather than a fixed agreement for a permanent deal. And so, therefore, I think they could see a value of him playing at Bayern Munich, getting that experience for a year, but they didn't want to necessarily see him go. So I think HudsonOdoi should look at that and go, do you know what? Chelsea aren't prepared to accept 70, 80 million pounds for me. So that's how much they value me, so maybe I should, kind of kick on, because I just think he's such a good talent, but last few months haven't been great for him.
Okay. Now, a quick break from all the serious stuff for a reminder that you can get comprehensive coverage of all of the reaction from this weekend's games in the Mirror Football pullout in the paper and, of course, on the Mirror Football website. But of course, we reporters, we've been giving our views on Twitter over the weekend as well. Big weekend for football, so why not? So I'm going to test our guys in a quick game of Clubman, Mirrorman, or Skyman. Ready for this? You don't look ready.
No, come on.
Okay. The rules are simple. I'm going to read you a quote. You tell me whether it was a manager from the Premier League over the weekend, a Mirror football reporter, one of our colleagues who came with that, or a Sky pundit, had a lot of comment on the big games over the weekend. First one. Imagine if they had an attacking coach. With a defensive coach, they score 5, 7, 6. With an attacking coach, they'd score 10, 11, or 12.
Oh, that's a manager.
I'd go Sky pundit.
It's Jose Mourinho in the game yesterday.
The man himself. Wasn't it great after the game last night when he was talking about how he'd won at Old Trafford so many times with United, with Real Madrid, and now with Spurs. It was just like, good old Jose, always back to him.
He is indeed back. Second one, the red card is pathetic. If Martial gets sent off, Lamela has to be sent off too. Is this what we want the Premier League to look like?
Definitely a Sky pundit.
Sky pundit.
Graham Souness, an angry man after yesterday's game between Manchester United and Spurs. I think he's got a point, actually. If Martial goes off, Lamela's got to go off as well. But as Mourinho says, the good guys, they never win. Clearly, his players taking the message on board. Third one, I don't normally advocate violence, but some people, they need a good slap.
Sky pundit, Patrice Evra, that one.
Yeah, it was Evra, wasn't it? Yeah.
One for the ages from Patrice Evra there. Fourth one, looks like Aston Villa or Everton for the title.
I'm going Mirror colleague there. I don't know who, but that sounds like something a Mirror colleague would say. I saw one from, I think one of our colleagues that said it's Everton's to lose now. I'll go Mirror colleague.
You're absolutely right. Again, Mike Walters, our Mirror colleague, with an ironic tweet over the weekend. And this last one, saving the best till last. Mad football results is no coincidence. It's tiredness, fatigue, crazy schedules, unpredictability, this bizarre world we now live in. This season will be one hell of a ride.
Go on, Crossy. You go. I'm just trying to.
Can I just say, the Premier League often do an annual Good Christmas quiz, a Good Christmas dinner for some journalists, and they put up some quite famous tweets from the aforementioned assembled journalists, and you have to pick out who said what. And I have to say, there's been 2 Christmas runnings when I couldn't identify my own tweets. But bearing in mind I tweeted it last night, I have to hold up my hands and basically say, yes, that was one from me. and what makes me laugh is that in all amongst those, that you've sifted through, you've not been able to find a tweet or a quote from a Sky pundit, a former Man United Sky pundit, criticising in any way Ole Gunnar Solskjaer. Yes, they'll hang out Man United. Yes, they'll hang out Ed Woodward, but will they have a go at their old teammate who has, let's be clear here, been in the job for nearly 2 years? No, they won't. Come on. He's got to do better than this.
Funny that, isn't it? And I'm sure you're talking about them, not me. Or maybe I need to raise my game as well.
No.
Okay, back to the transfers. And in the Sun, Celtic want West Ham's Scotland international Robert Snodgrass and the Liverpool winger Harry Wilson. It's in the Sun. The Star, they've got a rundown of what you can expect from your club on this deadline day. Very similar to what you can find in a double-page spread of all of the clubs and what the business they've done so far and the players they've got out and the deals we expect to be done today. So have a look at that if you can. You can get it on the Star's website. One serious story before we continue with the transfers as well. The Sun say that 3 England stars, Ben Chilwell, Tammy Abraham and Jadon Sancho, have been filmed attending a packed birthday party ahead of today's squad meetup? When will these England players learn? They were in a gathering of about 20 friends and family, clearly flouting their strict COVID-19 laws, with all three due to play against Wales on Thursday. It is feared that they've put the national team in jeopardy. Now, I've got to say, the FA have briefed already on this, and they say that nothing is going to happen, no action will be taken. Guys, got to get your views on this very quickly. An amazing story considering what we've already seen from England players so far.
Staggering. I'm just amazed by this. Listen, I actually think that it might be a developing story. I think that we might see a little bit more on this throughout the day, simply because obviously there's now a question of whether they can report up. I mean, Southgate was so clear last week about kind of discipline and code. And I think that basically you just can't do that. You can't basically break the national, rules. They're very, very clear. I mean, the players actually were respectful, so they knew what they were doing, because they even, Tammy Abraham even refers to having, temperature checks on their arrival to the party. So, I mean, they knew that what the risk was. You cannot allow these players, in my view, to report up. You just can't. It would be a national scandal.
Cross and said this is a developing story. What do you expect to happen today?
Listen, I've seen that report from the FA. Basically, that sort of kind of guidance, that sort of story in there. But having made my own inquiries, I do think that basically, I don't think it's a definitive yet. I think we will get a squad update later. I think there's still a decision to be made. Hey, listen, they might be able to, but I think that decision has yet to be taken over whether they can report up or not, as I understand.
Okay. Let's bring you in, Donny. What do you think, and what do you think will happen?
Well, I'm very similar to John. It will be obviously a progressing story, because obviously when they arrive at St George's Park, they will need to be tested. I just think overall, it must exasperate Gareth Southgate. It's not as if, what really sort of gets me is, it's not as if these guys are not getting advice. In the old days, we would have turned around and we would have said, where are the people to advise these guys? Where are the people to tell them what they have to do? Where are the people to give them sound, sage, wise advice? They've got everyone now. These players are advised at every turn by agents, by medical people, by their club representatives. They will be told exactly, listen, everyone is looking at you, to set examples. It's as simple as that. And this is what you do, and this is what you can't do. And they would have been said to Foden and Greenwood when they were away with England. It would have been said from a club level to these players who are featured in this story today. And what really, I think, the overarching picture is how these guys, are ignoring advice, basically. And that gives you that sort of, that comes back in that old sense that we think, they've got some sort of sense of entitlement, that the rules don't apply to them. Gareth Southgate can't be seen to reinforcing that idea that the rules don't apply to them. The rules apply to Tammy Abraham, Ben Chilwell, Jadon Sancho, as much as they apply to John Cross, Andy Dunn and Darren Lewis. And Gareth Southgate has to get that out there. Whether he will, not have them in the squad, that would certainly get that message out there. He might just stop short of that, but I think he'll certainly make it clear when he speaks next of his displeasure at what they've done.
Okay, it's a transfer deadline day here on the Mirror Football website. We're going to be with you for the next 11 hours so that we can keep you up to date with what's happening with your club. If you have any questions, get in touch with us. Let us know what your thoughts are, and we'll try to help you as much as we can. On a lighter note, let's do this. If it's good enough for Ed Woodward, the Manchester United chief executive, then it's good enough for us. So I'm going to pick some names out of a hat. You tell me whether or not you think the deal will happen or not, and where you think X or Y player will go. Here's the hat. Here are all the names, just to prove that I actually do have them. Let's have a look. The defender, Milan Skriniar. Where do you think he'll go, Crossy? What do you think will happen with him?
I think he's going to end up staying put, Des. So I think he's going to be priced out.
Just to be clear, Spurs trying to do a deal for him. He's a centre half. He would sort out Tottenham's defensive problems. He wants to go to Spurs, but the two clubs can't yet agree a deal.
Yeah, it's a lot of money. I mean, Inter are talking about 45, 50 million pounds. And I don't think that Spurs have got that ready cash, basically. I mean, they're also kind of into, you wonder whether it's posturing now, but basically making sounds as basically, it's too late, we can't get a replacement. Is that ratcheting up the price, or is that a genuine position? So let's see. But my hunch would be that basically, even though he's obviously been a Spurs target, I don't think that they would be able to afford that in ready cash. So they either lower their price or kind of offload others. And I think it will take quite a few, obstacles to overcome. And whether you're running out of time, I suspect you probably are. But absolutely would agree completely. He's an absolute, he would be a real physical presence. And I think that's an area that Spurs, despite their win at Old Trafford, perhaps are lacking a little bit moving forward.
Just a point of order, I said 11 hours, and of course I'll get in trouble for clocking off early. It's 13 hours that we'll be with you for. So, I don't think we should be turning off or clocking off any time before that. Let's give you another one. Jonathan Tarr. He's a Bayer Leverkusen centre-half, dunny. And West Ham want to sign him, but they don't seem very good at getting their deals for centre-halves done. Can you see some more heartbreak for them?
Well, I don't know. You would think that Boyd, I know they were certainly in for whether or not he'll move. James Tarkowski, I think, was another centre-half that they've been toing and froing with. And so it's clear that they feel they need one. And I just think on the back, buoyed by, that fantastic result yesterday and an uplift in form, I think they will be maybe a lot more keener to get this one over the line, or to get a centre-half over the line today if they can. Obviously, they'll have succeeded, I think, in one of their main pieces of action in keeping Declan Rice at the club, which I think, looks a certainty now. And to do this, would be great for them. I think they might give it a go today. Will they get it across the line? I don't think so now.
Just very quickly, would you bring in another centre-half, given the way they've defended in the last two games against top teams? 4-0 against Wolves the other day, 3-0 against Leicester, both of whom can score goals, have got that creativity in midfield, and yet West Ham were disciplined and absolutely outstanding.
Defended well throughout the team. Sorry, John, I'll just quickly say, defended well throughout the team. Again, you could have picked any of the back five yesterday. I'm including Declan Rice there in front of them as outstanding performers. But it is an area that Moyes has identified he wants to strengthen. And, he won't just judge it on the back of those two games. He'll judge it overall. And I guess he thinks he needs one.
I was just going to ask you, really, back to you. They've been heavily linked, haven't they, with a defender from Marseille? Yes,
they have, but they've struggled to get that deal over the line, and that's fallen apart. The Stella Group were dealing with it, but over the weekend the deal fell through. It looks very much as though they may be in for Maksimovic at Napoli, but Tarr at the moment does look to be the one that's come to the fore, and a deal that they're trying to get done. To be fair, they've shopped very well. Kufel at £5.4 million from Slavia Prague, a really good deal for David Moyes, who bought Thomas Souček from the same club, and has shopped really well when you consider the impact that Jared Bowen has made as well. So we'll watch that particular space as far as West Ham are concerned. Let's do some more, pick some names out of the hat. Doing our Ed Woodward here. Cross, you deal with Islam Slimani. Used to be a target for Leicester. Can you see him going to a West Brom as a backup striker, or maybe even a first choice striker?
Well, I do think that basically they probably need something, West Brom, don't they? They're basically, beaten again yesterday. It's not been an entirely. Blimey, they did show great signs against Chelsea. Listen, I can't pretend that I particularly know that he's definitely going to go there. I do think that at the moment they're looking and proving to be quite desperate at the moment, aren't they, West Brom? I see that kind of players out, isn't there? I think Charlie Austin's going to Derby, isn't he? So they're kind of probably shipping some out to bring some in, but I do think they could do with another forward. Listen, he didn't fulfil at Leicester, did he? So basically, maybe there's a bit of potential there.
Yeah. Okay, let's do our Ed Wood very quickly. We're running out of time, so I'd probably better get a few more in. Cross, you've written about him. Let's stick with you. Antonio Rudiger. Tell us whether you think he's going to stay or whether he's going to go before the window closes tonight.
Darren, the only thing I think about this one is that this has been rumbling for a while, isn't it? And he clearly, I think he's a really good player. I can't quite understand why he's been slightly, clearly been, ostracised, whether that's a wages thing, whether it's a contractual thing by Chelsea. Because actually, I like him as one of Chelsea's better defenders. But I think it would be madness, and I still can't logically see it that they would loan him to Spurs. But Spurs are obviously interested there. I think hasn't he got reservations about going to Italy, as I understand it? But AC Milan clearly want him. And then PSG as well. Listen, I think that basically he's got to be one of the guys that has got to be standing by his phone today and be ready to go wherever the mood takes him. He needs to go out really, because I think he's too good a player just to sit there and perhaps not even have a squad number at Chelsea, which would be the danger. So I actually think that he might yet move out on a loan. And as you wrote, I think last week, didn't you, that basically he's got to sign a new contract to do that. So Chelsea protecting their asset because they know they've got one.
Yeah, I think Chelsea might struggle to get a few players to sign new deals going forward, given what's happened with him and also what's happened with Callum HudsonOdoi. Dunny, deal with this one. Another Chelsea player, RubenLoftusCheek.
Well, now there is another one who needs to go out. Listen, there would be no shortage of takers for him across the Premier League. I wouldn't have thought all of the mid-rank.
We know that Southampton and West Ham very keen to sign him. Which of the two would be the best fit?
All linked with him. Chelsea do need to get some players out of there. But don't forget, they've already got is it three or four players out on loan in the Premier League? Ampadu, Connor, Gallagher, Ross Barkley, and there's another one who I'm trying to think. Oh, Batshuayi at Palace. And that would be another. Loftus-Cheek now would be the latest one. He will need, Ruben Loftus-Cheek in the same way as Ross Barkley. These are guys with England ambitions. These are guys who want to be at Euro 2020. Well, Euro 2020 in 2021. These are guys who need football, and Chelsea, of course, have got this massive squad. So it would not surprise me of all the players at Chelsea that we think might go out today, either HudsonOdoi or Rudiger. Even Marcus Alonso, maybe they might, try and offload today. I think Loftus-Cheek is the most likely. Which of those clubs will get him? I'm not sure.
Okay. Well, if it's good enough for Ed Wood to pick names out of a hat, bringing in Edinson Cavani, it's good enough for us. So let's try one more. Houssem Aouar, Crossy, talk to us about him. The Lyon midfielder, very impressive Lyon midfielder. Arsenal have been trying to get a deal done for him, and yet he's still at his club.
Yeah, and I can say with some degree of certainty that he'll remain at his club as the window shuts later. Listen, I think Arsenal have been after him. He's a more creative type, so they have been definitely after two midfielders, a sort of perhaps a more traditional six, which explains Thomas Partey and perhaps even a little bit of a desperation loan approach for Jorginho at Chelsea, which I think depended purely on basically Chelsea bringing others in. And again, I still find it struggle to believe that Chelsea would strengthen a rival. But Aouar basically is likened to me a bit like Cazorla. I mean, just keeps the game moving, very nice on the ball, progressive. Could play. I think that sort of maybe Arteta long term wants to go to a 4, and so needs to strengthen options in midfield. They've wanted him, but I think their valuation is miles away from what Lyon valuation is. And so basically,
the club said the other day, didn't they, that if they couldn't do the deal by Friday, then that was it. Now, and it kind of throws open just to the both of you really a wider issue. Is there a bit of arrogance with Premier League clubs? European clubs set deadlines, Premier League clubs ignore them and just continue bidding on their terms at their time. Man United losing out, obviously, over Sancho on that basis, and Arsenal, if they are still in for him, would appear to have lost out with Aouar as well.
Yeah, I listen. I do take your point. I do think that certain clubs set deadlines, and they're not really deadlines. They're deadlines that sort of ratchet up the price. I think you have to know your market, and Leon are notoriously, well, that's their president, basically notoriously difficult to deal with, and basically will hold out for a price. And listen, I think Aouar is a good talent. As other clubs now, link with him, you wonder whether Arsenal missed their window of opportunity, if you like. Listen, I think for Arsenal, I think they're basically now, I think their transfer activity will be on outs rather than ins. Guendouzi, I'm pretty sure, will be going to Hertha Berlin. Torreira, is pretty much there with his move. Kolasinac, moved to Germany with Leverkusen. Potential could happen on a permanent basis today. So, yeah, I think with that, I think Arsenal, if they'd had their opportunity and could have got those outgoings sooner, then I think they would have had more scope to up the price. But the fact of the matter is that I think it's more relevant for English clubs at the market who are saying we're not paying the same prices because of the financial impact of COVID. Some clubs have been, but other clubs have shied away from it and said, you have to reduce your price by 10, 20, 25%. I don't think that some of the foreign clubs will entertain that. Leon certainly will.
Okay. Go ahead.
Sorry, just quickly, I would agree with that in terms of it's maybe not so much about deadlines, but about price ceilings, basically. And so the Dortmund issue, for example, with Sancho, isn't so much about any deadlines. It's about, United, whether you like it or not, they're being heavily criticised, saying, well, okay, just get this deal done. But if they don't think that Jadon Sancho considering today's mitigating financial circumstances is, worth in excess of £100 million or £120 million, whatever fee Dortmund exactly are demanding, then that's their prerogative not to pay it. I understand that. There's always been a premium on Premier League on the Premier League buying players. The Germans had a phrase for it, I think they called it stupid English money. So they would always they used to laugh at the amount of money they get from Premier League clubs, and that can't continue. That can't continue in this day and age. So I think that's more a case of the premium that foreign clubs put on players that are going to the Premier League that is the sticking point for clubs rather than any timings.
Okay, let's go one more time with the stupid English transfer policy. Hand in the hat. What have we got here? Deal with this one for us, Danny. One last one. Danny Rose. What's going to happen with him, in your opinion?
He has to go out on loan. I mean, again, I'm not entirely certain where he will end up. But he will have to go out of there. I think there's obviously no future for him at Spurs. His contract's up at the end of the season, so out on loan. Where, I don't know.
Okay, no. To be fair, neither would he at this stage.
Can I just say, can we have a whip round, mate, to keep him in English football? I just love Danny Rose. Yeah. Danny Rose is like brilliant. He's outspoken. We love him, and I just think we'll miss him so much. I can't believe it's come to this. I cannot believe it's come to this. That basically, okay, he does speak his mind. I just feel a bit sorry for him. That the documentary wasn't even a great look for him, was it? But actually, what's wrong with saying what you feel to the manager? And, if a club are then daft enough to kind of let the cameras in, then basically what do you expect? It's going to be broadcast. And I just feel that Danny Rose, okay, he's not the force that he was, but I think he's a terrific player in there. There's a really strong, outspoken character. And I just feel a bit sorry for him because he's given his all for Tottenham. And these are the players that on deadline day, your heart really goes out to him. Because don't tell me that it's all about multi-millionaire footballers. These guys want to play, and these guys want a future. And I just really hope that hope against hope that someone can find a place for Danny Rose.
Okay. Well, look, that's it for our morning show. Big thanks to John Cross, our chief football writer, and to Andy Dunn, our chief sports writer. I must tell you, I've done a few of these transfer deadline days, and this one looks as though it could be one of the most dramatic we've had 4 years. So stay in touch, and we'll keep you right across it at Mirror Football. If you want to tweet us, you can go to mirrorfootball.co.uk for all of your up-to-date transfer news. The blog is ongoing throughout the day, so have a look at that, contribute to it. You guys will be all across that as well. Just to confirm, the window closes tonight at 11:30, and our team will be updating you right the way through the day. Until then, we'll see you next time.